Welcome, everybody. It's been a long week of CSW so far, and we are so excited to present. Okay, just making sure everything works here. Okay, so for our speaker list, first we are going to hear from Albert M. Pooley. So, Al Pooley is the founder and president of the Native American Fatherhood and Families Association, also known as NAFA, based in Mesa, Arizona. He is a proud member of both the Hopi and Navajo cultures, and he has dedicated his career to strengthening Native American families and communities through education, advocacy, and cultural preservation. Mr. Pooley holds a Master of Social Work and a Master of Public Administration and has extensive experience as a marriage and family counselor. I'm going to ask that everybody who isn't.
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now? Wonderful. Okay, great. Okay, and then we're going to hear from Fatima. I'm just going to go through all the bios now, just for time's sake. So, Fatima is a devoted wife, mother, and leader who embodies the core values of faith, family, and motherhood upheld by Big Ocean Women. She's been with Big Ocean for almost a decade. So, a committed member of the organization for 8 years, Fatima has faithfully served and grown within the community, inspired women through her dedication and leadership. She's married for 14 years and blessed with 3 children. She skillfully balances family life with her professional and academic pursuits. She is a lawyer by training and currently a PhD candidate. Fatima is passionate about lifelong learning and personal growth. Although she loves reading, her busy schedule often leaves her wishing for more hours in the day. And beyond her family and academic commitments, Fatima serves as the president of the Jos Nigeria Pioneer Wave. WAVE is what Big Ocean Women calls our local chapters. It stands for Women Achieving Vast Empowerment, but it's just our local chapter. So she's the president of the Jos Nigeria Pioneer Wave, leading a vibrant community of over 100 women. She also holds the position of regional manager for West Africa, where she continues to empower and support women across the region with vision, integrity, and heart. After that, we're going to hear from Kara Baldry. So, Kara Baldry is a woman of great faith and courage who relishes in sharing her love for Jesus Christ. Professionally, she works as an instructional coach at an elementary school and holds a master's degree in curriculum and instruction. As a ritual abuse survivor who knows the depths of miracles of a healing journey, Kara has become deeply committed to child advocacy, feeling a lifelong calling to protect children from abuse and to support survivors. Learning about policy reform has become a highlight in her journey as she championed pioneering legislation to illegalize ritual abuse in Utah, and she continues to advocate for other legislation to help children be safer. Kara treasures being with her family and friends, laughter, travel, and heartfelt music. She believes a beautiful pair of shoes or radiant jewelry can brighten even the cloudiest days. Thank you, Kara. And then finally, I will present, and then we will hear from Carolina Allen. She's the president and founder of Big Ocean Women. She's an international maternal feminist, which is an international maternal feminist organization representing the perspectives of faith, family, and motherhood across civil society. Carolina is a native of Brazil and fluent in multiple languages. She holds a BA in philosophy from the University of Utah, where she focused on cultural religions and the philosophy of science. Driven by a deep conviction that women inherent strengths can be a force for good in families, communities, and the world, she founded Big Ocean Women with the vision of transforming individual waves into a collective global ocean of positive impact. Under her leadership, Big Ocean Women has grown into a global sisterhood, training and empowering hundreds of women in over 20 nations through maternal leadership development, community building, and educational engagement. Carolina is a sought-after speaker on maternal feminism and cultural leadership and has represented Big Ocean Women at international forums, including engagement connections with the United Nations, like today, where the organization brings faith-based maternal perspectives into global conversations. Her philosophy centers on the belief that women's unique capacities, rooted in motherhood, care, and relational leadership, are essential for shaping healthy homes and flourishing societies. Carolina lives with her family in the United States and continues to expand Big Ocean Women's global reach through community initiatives, mentorship programs, and resources that equip mothers to lead with clarity, conviction, and compassion. That is a great introduction for Big Ocean Women as well. Okay, so without further ado, we are going to turn the time over to Al Pooley. Go ahead, Al.
Thank you. I want to thank you for inviting me to participate in this project with you. As she mentioned, my name is Al Pooley. I'm a marriage and family therapist by profession, and I work primarily with Native American families and couples throughout my career. At this particular time in history, we work with over 350 tribes throughout North America. And so one of the things we presented to them is that as a therapist, I have learned that knowledge rarely changes people. And a lot of programs just give more knowledge, more knowledge. To change people, you must make them feel. You must touch their heart to make them change. So what I've done is that I say, I never tell a man, for an example, not to hit his wife. He knows that. The law tells him that. I don't tell him to be respectful. He already knows that too. I tell him this. What is the greatest creation of the Creator God? What's his greatest creation? Some people will say, well, it's the universe, it's the earth. I say, yes, those are great, great creations. But the greatest creation of the Creator, I says, from our point of view, is this. It's womanhood. Why do I say womanhood? Because it is a woman that renews life to the earth. A man cannot do that. It is a woman that sustains life. She would breastfeed the child. A man cannot do that either. A woman also brings beauty to life. She brings beauty to life. Okay. She also brings order to life if you listen to her. Not only that, you know what else? Every time a child is born, she has renewed purity and innocence back to the earth. That's phenomenal. A man cannot do that. So I want men and women to understand the greatest creation of the Creator is womanhood. And I've gotten trouble for saying this. I tell women, quit trying to be like a man. Be a woman. That's the greatest creation of the Creator God. And I tell the men this, you need to honor them and respect them because that's the greatest creation. So I want to start with that. I want to make people feel the importance of womanhood. Next slide. Let's talk about family now. The importance of family. If I want to destroy somebody, I don't destroy their careers or their houses or their automobiles. I destroy their families. If I destroy their families, I got them. Okay? Family is the heart of all civilizations. It's the heart of who we are. And what happens when your heart stops beating? You die. When our families are broken up and scattered, dead as a people, we got to understand the power and the beauty of family. Next slide. I cannot see that. Okay. Strengthening families, keeping them connected. One of the things we do in our program here is that how do we strengthen families that are already intact, mom and dad and children? Number two, how do you keep families together? Because divorce is so prevalent today, the two most important people in the children's lives is their mother and father. So how do we keep families today? Because sometimes divorce is necessary. You know what? It is easier to fall out of love than it is to fall in love. You know that? I've been a therapist for over 50 years. I've learned that. It's easier to fall out of love than it is to fall in love. So families do break up. Now, if there's children involved, like I said, how do we keep families together to remain friends as a family? Number three, how do you reunite families? Because families have been broken, kids have been adopted, or they've been incarcerated, they've been in foster care group homes. How do you reunite families? So our whole mission is how do we do that with families? Because families is the heart of who we are. Now we got to look at the purpose of life. The next slide. The next slide, please. Okay. The purpose of life. When you have purpose in life, you get things accomplished. But the purpose of how we define it here in this program is this: to have a happy and safe family. Not just to have a family. Anybody can have a family. We want our families to be truly happy and safe. That's the magic glue that pulls people together and keeps families together. When a man and woman accept and embrace their vision, the same vision, it helps them become better, become of one mind and one heart. It strengthens the family because now fathers are committed to mothers and mothers are committed to fathers and they're committed to the whole families. So because we share the same purpose. Next slide. We have found that when we really understand, not know, but we really understand the importance and power of family, you know, we will we will defend them. We will take better care of them. We will work with all our might to keep them together and strengthen them. But not just know it, we must truly understand the power and the beauty of families. Next slide. Okay, now let's talk about motherhood, precisely motherhood now. We've been over briefly womanhood, but let's talk about motherhood. Mo- this long slide.
This was switched. It was switched.
It was switched?
This is the old version.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Motherhood. Okay.
Throw away food like that.
No.
Okay. Let's talk about motherhood for a minute. Motherhood, we tell them, is an honor and a noble profession, honorable and noble profession. Why? Because you know what? We native people believe that after you die, you will still be a mother or a father. You may be a doctor, let's say, or a lawyer or engineer, and you will retire from that someday. But as a mother and father, you never retire from that. That's why motherhood is an honorable and noble profession. Not only that, motherhood is the strongest thing on this earth. There's nothing stronger than the soft, tender heart of a loving and caring mother. There's nothing stronger than that. And I tell my clients this. You know, there's stories about young men who were in war. Let's say during World War II, they were being shot and wounded on the beaches of Normandy and Iwo Jima. They were dying and they were crying for what? Not for their cars. They were crying for their mothers. Mothers. Women understand that motherhood is the most honorable and noble profession you will ever have for eternity. So again, we want to have our men understand the power and the beauty and the strength of motherhood. Next slide. Okay, she is a great blessing to our world, to all the world. Okay, her influence and impact is you can't measure that. It's endless. It's powerful. So we want to tell people: be proud to be a mother. Don't just say I'm a mom. No, be proud of your journey as a mother. There's nothing more beautiful than that. Next slide. Okay, that's my time's about up anyway. I don't know. I said I was told I have a few minutes to talk, but anyway, I want to thank you for listening to me. I could talk for hours about womanhood and motherhood. I tell the fathers even this: a lot of people. I work with a lot of native tribes, and they pride themselves on being traditional. And I say that's wonderful. But you know what? If you're really traditional, if you really are traditional, every woman, every child, regardless of their race, regardless of their economic status or education, every woman should feel safe in the presence of a traditional native man. Period. End of story. They should feel safe. And I tell that to the world too. If you call yourself a man, you make sure that every woman and every child feels safe in your presence. And that's our message here at our program. We say our name of our company is called Native American Fatherhood and Family Association. Why do we put fathers? We say fathers, you are not the boss in your family. Fatherhood is leadership. Does not mean you're the boss. It doesn't mean you're more important. It means you lead your family with love and compassion. That's how you lead your families. So again, we have reasons for that. Okay, I can go on, but do you have any? I don't know. Do you have any questions or comments you want to say? Anybody?
Yes.
If not, I want to thank you for having me on. I guess I could talk for hours, but I don't know if my this is the first time I've ever done this like this. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Al. We will have a Q&A at the end of this presentation as well. So for those of you guys who have questions, please save them to the end and then direct your question to who on the panel you're asking it to. Okay, Fatima.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's so good to be here with you. So I'm going to be talking on justice systems. Let me just start by talking about what justice systems are. So looking at our title, when justice systems fail, mothers rise, So what are justice systems? And then justice systems, next slide, justice systems are basically the entire infrastructure that is put together, to ensure justice. So we're looking at policies, you're looking at laws, you're looking at rules, all of that make up everything that make up, the judiciary. You look at enforcement, where you're looking at the police, the prisons, incarceration systems, procedures, the deterrence structures, all those things that are put together to ensure fairness, all fitting neatly under the justice system. But most times when we hear justice systems, people's mind will go to the criminal justice system, where people are incarcerated, you go to court and all of that. But all those other structures that ensure that your civil contracts are enforceable, your marriage contracts are intact and all of that, you can put all of them neatly under the justice system. Now, justice systems are supposed to ensure fairness, but we find that sometimes our concepts of fairness differ. And then what people understand by justice also differ. So let's go to the next slide. So looking at what the concept of justice is, it looks at a situation where people think of being equal under the rule of law. So people say rule of law, when you talk of justice, people talk about rule of law, emphasizing that law is supreme over everyone, every institution, every system. The law is the law, regardless of who is, under the law and who is facing the law. And then, of course, there's also the idea that under the law, everybody is equal. But then, like George Orwell noted in his book on Animal Farm, all animals are equal, but not all. Some animals are more equal than the others. So you find that, yes, the rule of law, the concept of justice, would wish that all of us are equal under the law. But when you look at in operation, you find that it's not really always like that. There's all this issue of balance of power and things like that. So when you're talking of concept of justice, people also look at application of laws. They want it to be fair, fairly applied across board, make sure that everybody governed by the law is accountable, it's not arbitrarily used and all of that. And so to ensure that the rule of law is intact, there are also other systems like judiciary, and then you hear the independence of the judiciary. We want the judiciary to be so independent that the executive arm of government does not interfere with whatever the judiciary is doing. You have concepts like separation of powers. All of these are to ensure that justice is not just done, but it seems to be done. But then when we look at it, how does this really play out? So let's look at the adequacy of the justice system. Next slide. So we see that there's a justice system, and then there are rules, there are efforts to make sure that people are, equally treated under the law, fairly administered under the law, and all of that. But then, regardless of all these safeguards, trying to make sure that the separation of powers, there's no undue influence, the judges are not biased. In spite of all of that, you still find that the justice systems are not very, very safe. I mean, they are not really adequate enough. So you find that though there are policies and principles and institutions to make sure that, justice is administered, the system is still very vulnerable. You find that there are still weaknesses that are exploited. There are still gaps to be filled. And international law, for example, since we are all international here, let's look at international law. You find that people have this idea that it's generally weak. And of course, you can even say from their informed opinions. People tell you that international law is weak, and that's because they feel you cannot really enforce, whatever penalties or sanctions. You can't enforce it in the sense that you don't have an international police that is instituted for that. And then, of course, before you are bound under international law, you have to have consent. There's this concept of voluntariness. So you find that states have to sign before any kind of treaty is binding on them. They have to sign, they have to ratify. For it even to apply in their countries, they have to ratify, which means that their local parliaments, it still differs different countries, but most countries will tell you that their local parliament have to pass that on into law again to make it even to apply locally. So when we look at that one, and then we look at the issue of balance of power between states, when you look at if two states have issues and this is one state is stronger than the other one, and when you start talking about justice systems, you find that these are the things that people will look at and say international law is weak, because even if the laws are there, some countries can decide to violate it with little or no consequence at all. Then when you look at local systems as well, the local laws, you find that systems are still subject to abuse, even though there's a concept of separation of powers, there's a concept of independence of judiciary. It, on ground and in reality, you find that these things are not perfect. Many times the executive arm of government overreach, other arms, and then they influence how things go. You find that the government is able to do certain things and the judiciary, for example, if there's a situation that the judiciary presides over and the judiciary passes a sentence or passes a judgment, you still rely on the executive arm of government, who are the ones in charge of the police, to actually deploy the police to enforce those judgments. So judgments on paper are just like, you can call them paper tigers. If you cannot enforce them, then they just remain tigers on paper. So you find that even though you're talking about separation of powers, many times these things are still interconnected. So if somebody needs to be arrested, you need the executive and all of that. And then of course the parliaments have to make the laws. The judiciary will only apply those laws, even though sometimes they make laws in the course of interpreting and applying laws. But you find that these things are still kind of mixed. And so you can't clearly really separate those things. And then at the end of the day, you find that the justice systems are not really as adequate as you want them to be. Next slide. So because of these failures, you find that human rights abuses continue. You find that there's a lot of deprivation, there's a lot of trauma as a result of these human rights abuses. People become very hopeless. There's a lot of hopelessness. And then because of the failure of the justice systems, people do things that cause a lot of harm and damage to other people. There's a lot of loss that people experience as a result of failure of justice systems to actually either protect them or to help them get reparations and all of that. Another thing again is that there's entrenchment of impunity. You find that because of the inadequacy of the justice systems to really protect everybody fairly, some people who feel like they are animals that are more equal than the other animals can actually keep getting away with doing whatever they want. They can bully others and get away with it because they are more equal than the others, in quotes. Now, other things you see is that there's insecurity, there's a lot of violence, armed conflicts. All these things thrive because justice systems are not as adequate enough as to ensure that there is justice. So you find that loss of lives, a lot of people die just because some people feel they can kill and get away with it, nothing will happen. In fact, like in Nigeria, some people even get so used to breaking the law that they'll tell you that I can do this and nothing will happen. In fact, at the last elections we had in Nigeria, people were contesting the results and very unhappy, and a popular slogan developed that people will just say, go to court, because they know that no matter how much you complain and say this is injustice, they'll tell you go to court, because they know that on your way to court there are a lot of hurdles. Going to court, there's a lot of hurdles, there's a lot of costs, there's a lot of technicalities, and the fact that you go to court does not necessarily mean that you get judgment. And even if you get the judgment, doesn't necessarily mean that those judgments will be enforced. And then when you look at the idea of appeals, for example, those systems where people would say, you go to the court of first instance, you get judgment, and then someone would say, I'm going to appeal. So like in Nigeria, for example, you have the Court of Appeal, you go on appeal, you have so many years, and then they'll say, okay, whatever comes out from appeal, they'll say, well, I'm going back to the Supreme Court. In the midst of all of that, a lot of harm is going on, a lot of deprivation is going on, and a lot of injustice is going on. So the list goes on, and the end result of this is that we end up with a very sick world. As we can attest, the world is really sick right now. Now, let's look at this diagram. It's not very clear. Next slide. Yeah. So when you look at equality, equality is like you try to help a little bit to see that people are able to, be helped on an equal ground. While equity, tries to see that it meets everybody at its weak point, to see that everybody is able to access what they need to access. But for justice systems, it doesn't meet you at any point at all. Justice is supposed to just apply regardless of whether this person is stronger, this person is taller, this person is shorter. It just applies across board. So you find that at the end of the day, the justice systems will not really bring justice because we're not all equal. We don't have the same strengths and all of that. So let's go to the next slide, looking at mothers as agents of healing and protection. So the family unit is actually is supposed to be like our safest place. If the family unit is allowed to operate as designed, how it ordinarily should, you find that families that operate according to design, those families most of the time are very balanced and there's a lot of equity because families will mothers, let me look at mothers now, because mothers most of the time are the homemakers. They meet, for example, if there's problem, there's a quarrel amongst children, you find that when they pass their judgment, it's not like the justice system. A mother will look at who is stronger, who is older, and all of that, who has more advantage. And in handling the situation, even though the mother is not a judge, is not a lawyer, but is able to actually, bring about equity in her finding justice among the kids than the justice system will do. And then when you look at this access to the justice systems, like I said earlier, the cost involved, the expense, the acrimony at the end of the day, and all of that, you just find that the home is actually a safer place. And the mothers are actually very well protected enough to be able to protect us if we allow them to operate. Mothers, they are the ones that bear children, they nurture children. And then they have that sphere that with children that are within their sphere of influence, even if not directly given birth to by them, are also part of those who enjoy the protection of mothers and better concept of justice. Now, mothers, they protect from harm. They protect the home as much as they can. They absorb shock that comes externally and internally. They contend with whatever it is, the battles that are out there, the battles that are in the house, whether there's scarcity or not. They try to keep the home, calm and settled. And they try to heal the pains, whether the pains will go out there and then you receive a lot of, punches and all of that. But you are sure that the mother is there to heal, to protect, to encourage, if she's allowed to function as it's supposed to be. Now, let's go to the next slide. You look at that, there's a lot of rise of female-headed households, not just in Nigeria, but globally because of insecurity, because of armed violence. Most of the time, the men are the first to go. So like in Nigeria, there's been ongoing violence, ongoing insecurity, terrorism for more than a decade now. Government plays politics. They want to be politically correct. They say things that they don't mean and all of that. But then real lives are the ones that are endangered. Real human beings are the ones that pay the price, that are the ones that are the receiving end of all these things. And what happens most of the time, the women rise up when the men are taken out, whether they are killed, they have to go in hiding, they are detained and all of that. Women are the ones who rise up. And this concept of female-headed households has become it's become very frequent. I wanted to get the statistics on that. I only got for 2017 that was talking about 163,000 households. That was from UNHCR, but because it was 2017, I didn't bother to quote it. But it's actually real that female-headed households are coming up and women are standing out to try to heal from all these things, even though they themselves are suffering the harm, they're suffering the deprivation and all of that, but they absorb it and try to create a balance. Now, due to the protracted violence and all of that across many countries, you find that women, the caregiving that they do, they are torn between giving care, caring for themselves, and caring for others around them. So the role that women are playing is really, really very crucial, and they continue to be examples of resilience. So next slide. Due to the fact that there's a lot, the justice systems have failed, many women have actually experienced the very sad situation of watching their loved ones killed right before their eyes and having to be the ones to bury those people by themselves, just to, you see, they are not just caring for the living, they are even caring for the dead, to make sure that the corpses of their loved ones are properly buried. So they go through all of that. And then some of them, because violence does not give notice, sometimes you find some of them are already pregnant, due to give birth, or sometimes the pressure of running, because there's violence, there's attacks going on, that are running, and then they go into labor. Some of them, while in the bushes, trying to, care for themselves and the children they are running with, they go into labor. Some of them go into labor while in IDP camps, where there are no what do you call them now? No midwives, nobody to care for them, and then they have to care for themselves and these children with no skills at all. For in Nigeria, most of the northeastern women are usually were farmers. Most of them were farmers, and then as soon as there were attacks and all of that, they could not farm anymore because they were fully displaced, and then they have lost sorts of livelihood. But they had to just find a way to rise up to the occasion, find odd jobs, contend with whatever it is to make sure that the family keeps going on. Then even the girls themselves, you find that many girls are kidnapped from their schools, they are raped, they are forcefully converted, going through a lot of things. And then at the end of the day, these women try to get up and speak. You find that even the young ladies, when they get the opportunity, they get up and speak just to see that their livelihood continues. So Big Ocean Women, next slide. Big Ocean Women has put together a model that encourages women to become models of powerful impact. So first of all, Big Ocean Women directs you back to God, because the model of powerful impact, the source of all power and strength is God. That's our belief. God gives us, all life flows from God, and all power, all inspiration comes from Him. And so the model that Big Ocean Women have put together is reminding women to go back to God for their source. Because sometimes you look around you and you cannot find any strength to go on. You look at sometimes even the men in some women's life harass them so much that they don't have any strength left. When they finish taking all the wounds and the bullets and they're still caring for their children, you have nowhere to turn to, but there's God. And so Big Ocean Women is directing women again, go back to God, who is the source of all strength. And as women gather every month, talking about 12 different tenets, it helps them to continue to be resilient, to know how to handle life issues together, share ideas and all of that, so that when time for trouble comes, they are prepared. Talking about preparing the horse against the day of trouble, as the Bible says. So, next slide. So far, Big Ocean Women has helped victims and survivors of conflict in different ways. They've helped them to find their footing by providing platforms to learn skills, platforms to be able to protect their families, to be able to continue to not just survive, but do it with dignity beyond, the systems that are failing and all of that. Gives them a reason to keep going on. Big Ocean has also helped troubled teenagers find them. Some troubled teenagers have found themselves victims in the sense that they're unjustly thrown away by society. Big Ocean has done projects to help them recover, find a way out, deal with trauma, and continue pushing on in life with a lot of dignity. Next slide. So we have also hosted a lot of conferences, retreats, and all of that. Talk about capacity strengthening, capacity building, and all of that, to help women to be able to survive domestic abuse, to know how to go about these things. Ask questions, ask the men, why do you hit us? Why are you abusing us domestically, physically? What is the problem? Big Ocean has created those platforms where women are able to confront and also find answers and keep going. And then the younger people, as the younger ones come up, Big Ocean has also given platforms where younger ones are equipped with information and everything that they need to help them to become resilient. So last slide. So in summary, Big Ocean Women believe that our true power comes from within us and extends to our families, our communities, and the world at large. So every human being, of course, we know that every human being on earth comes from a family, every one of us. And so the influence and the impact of family, you cannot overemphasize it. And if we ignore this, we do that at our own peril. So we believe that women can rise with authority to protect and heal when they find their innate powers, understand it, and put it to action. So as women listening to this presentation, let's find our inner compass from within us. Let's find the inner motivation within us and draw strength from God, and we can do great things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fatima. So powerful. And thank you so much for the overview of Big Ocean Women as well. Okay, so far we have talked about injustices and um, mostly done to women and girls and how the indigenous perspective of family and of faith offers solutions. And now we've talked about, of course, our Big Ocean Wave in Nigeria and Fatima's perspective. The next two presentations are going to be specifically about sexual violence and how there are injustices done to women and girls there. I do want to offer a trigger warning for any listeners. Um, some of the details that we'll be discussing are somewhat graphic. They do have a point. We do have a call to action and we do have a solution. Our presentation will end with hope, but I just want all listeners to move forward with an understanding that we will be discussing some dark and heavy things. Okay, so Kara is our faith-filled, hope-filled beam of light. We love Kara, and I'm gonna turn the time over to you now.
Thank you so much. And thanks, Fatima and Al. 6 years old. That is how old I was when my perpetrator started grooming me. 6 years old is too young to understand masterful deception. 6 years old is too young to physically fight off monsters by yourself. These are not the monsters under your bed, but monsters who get into your bed and get into every safe place in your life, destroying the innocence, especially of our little girls. My monster is one of a sea of monsters globally. In my presentation, I want to share things we can all do to stop these monsters, and I want to bear witness of the healing that can come from the aftermath of their destruction. My name is Kara Baldry. Thank you to Big Ocean Women for inviting me to speak today about my survivor experience of ritualized sexual abuse as a child, and I will refer to this evil as ritual abuse. To say that I feel honored to speak today is an understatement, especially as I was told by my sneaky perpetrator that I was invisible. Even though I have a phenomenal family, because of this monster, the emotionally staining words he projected on me were written into my belief system for much of my life. I am here to create awareness about ritual abuse. Ritual abuse is a war against our children. As the world has seen ritual abuse in the Epstein files unfold, it is a hidden purgatory and is possibly the closest a human can get to hell and still remain living. Next, some crimes, especially any sexual coercion of our children, are so difficult and painful to hear that many choose to ignore or dismiss the truth. Mold grows and thrives in dark places when left alone and ignored, just like ritual abuse has been. These torture stories have gone with many survivors to their graves. Today, I honor the missing stories of the invisible children who didn't make it and the adult survivors who couldn't hang on in a world where they were not helped nor believed. We need armies of warriors and advocates to seek out the invisible children who sometimes grow up to be invisible adults in a war they never chose to enlist in. Next. Thank you. For those who are unfamiliar with what ritual abuse is, it is organized and intentional sexual, physical, and psychological torture designed to control the victims and is marked by ceremonial actions, clothing, objects, signs, symbols, and words designed to commemorate or celebrate particular occasions in a cultural, social, or especially a religious context. If satanic rituals are added, that is called satanic ritual abuse or SRA. Another term used is RAMCOA, which stands for ritual abuse, mind control, and organized abuse. Cults are often involved. There are already laws about child sexual abuse, sexual violence, and even torture. But ritualized sexual abuse adds the component of rituals and organized torture, usually in a religious manipulation. I consider it modern day slavery in our own backyards, where many of the perpetrators can be well educated, well connected, and influential. Yet these seemingly nice people are ravenous wolves devouring our children. These perpetrators have deceived many because outward appearances and actions don't match the allegations. This form of abuse is often an intergenerational familial problem. Many of my survivor friends were also trafficked, experienced cannibalism, human sacrifices, or participated in forced torture of other children, which I have no memories of myself. Those who prey upon defenseless children are the ultimate cowards, especially since many culprits literally hide their faces during abuse, just like roaches who scurry when the light is on, they hide. People are sometimes comfortably uneducated and are quick to make false assumptions on these crimes. Children are casualties to our adult dismissal on this topic. In June of 2021, my memories started coming back to the forefront of my mind, exploding furiously as they purged from the deepest places inside, sometimes for hours a day, for several months. My repressed memories would occasionally come forward after that for over 3 more years. This is dissociation. And my memories were deeply suppressed for over 3.5 decades. You can go to the next slide. Your mind can completely sever overwhelming experiences and lock them away inside until they are safe enough to come forward. Dissociative amnesia is well documented and explains why children don't report abuse. Every abuse memory that has come forward for me was severely dissociated, and it is viewed like I am floating and looking down upon my perpetrator hurting me. Next slide. When my dissociated memories came back, I learned to thank Jesus and my body for helping release them because I was truly grateful this ugliness was no longer trapped deep inside, causing problems. I believe in bringing the dark things to the light to be healed, and I wanted Jesus to heal me. From what I've been able to reconstruct, my perpetrator started grooming me when I was about 6 years old in Salmon, Idaho, in the United States, and it continued off and on for several years. Although most ritual abuse survivors have many perpetrators, I have memories of just one abuser. I want to emphasize that my parents have completely loved and protected me my entire life, had no part of this, and my abuse has not only traumatized me as a survivor, but my whole family. As a young child in 2nd grade, my perpetrator would sometimes wait as my bus dropped me off at school in the morning. I had already been groomed and was trained to get in his car if he showed up. This is kidnapping. It happened many times. He would take me away for a few hours at a time while he tortured me, but was careful not to leave many visible marks. My good parents assumed I was safe at school. He taught me to never fight back or tell anyone because the abuse would intensify under constant threats of killing me and my family, and I was told it would be my fault if they died. I believed him, especially when he murdered a cat in front of me and forced me to do horrible things with it. When he would drop me back off at school, no one ever asked questions or contacted my very diligent parents as to why I was late. And I don't think I even remembered what had happened just minutes before because my brain dissociated, so I gave no indication of the abuse. These many years later, I still struggle feeling my body sometimes. Next. There are many categories to ritual abuse, and this slide is not comprehensive to my experiences. This monster who is free today would sadistically rape me at gunpoint and with a hunting knife, urinate on me, do things involving rituals and animals that leave profound psychological marks. He tried to erase my divine identity in every capacity. He said that he was feasting on my innocent body, just like an animal would, and he referred to his actions as his feedings. He manipulated scriptures and did everything he could to steal God's light from me. I was told we were doing what God wanted because we were naked like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Once I remember him raising his arms as he prayed to Satan, asking for power in exchange for hurting me, and he said I was the sacrificial lamb. He said he preferred raping little girls like me because I was too young to get pregnant. Others, often, I was forced to beg for horrific sexual experiences and then thank him for his cruelty. My perpetrator programmed me to believe words like I deserved to die because I was God's mistake, that God hated me, or nobody would ever love me because I was Jesus's whore. If I asked him to stop or ever complained, which was definitely not allowed, he would say things like, I thought you were a good little girl who followed directions. Your parents want you to do this, so you must not love them. Don't you trust them? Do you like hurting people's feelings? He said I was the last one picked for this training because no one else wanted me. I remember when some of the really sexual memories came forward, I had so much shame. I got on my knees to pray to my divine maker, and I told my Jesus that I wished I had been murdered, like my evil perpetrator had often threatened and wished upon me. I remember saying that no human should ever have to hold such horrific memories and still have to live the rest of her life. I didn't think that was possible to keep living. Living seemed like a horrible punishment. The historian Nell Irvin Painter describes the effect of rape as soul murder, and that is exactly what it feels like. In that context, my soul was murdered countless times in very violent and inhumane ways, usually with all sorts of creative filth. I started apologizing for not being abused the right way and would tell him I would try harder to get it right. It was like I was completely invisible, and because I was a child, it didn't count. The lack of justice today confirms my feelings that my abuse did not count to some people. Ensuring justice for all women and girls means that we never passively ignore crimes and that protectors work diligently to ensure investigations are not selectively protecting institutions, reputations, or powerful people. When someone's safety is weaponized, especially as a child, terror causes massive dysregulation because trauma is stuck in the very cells of your body. And it is a lot of hard, dedicated work to rewrite false programming. My brain was wired for fear, so it does not yet know how to relax. And I've had many, many health problems as a result. I don't know what it feels like to wake up from a night's rest feeling restored and rested. Even though I have a graduate degree in education and was even nominated for a national teaching award and hold a leadership job, I can't figure out how to have sleeping routines because I'm still excavating the remnants of the ritual abuse that was thrust upon me. Next. While I firmly believe in justice for all, the reality of my own experience reflects a troubling juxtaposition. Justice has certainly not been granted to me, nor for any other ritual abuse survivor I know, not one. Let's change that. I reported this abuse in March of 2022 to the Salmon City Police Department in Idaho. As a victim who has been constantly re-traumatized in this process, it's been an underwhelming investigation. It was confusing to hear my detective tell me to never doubt that I am believed, but then have that followed with nothing. As a victim, it feels like there is no interest in justice since the communication and follow through is limited. After realizing I would not be helped locally, I have sought guidance from a sergeant, a captain several times, a colonel, a local prosecutor, and various local and state government officials. Almost no one responds. No one will help me. I need help. I've asked repeatedly from 2 agencies to file former complaints, but I have not received assistance. I know my case is old and there's no physical evidence now, so I am relying on a confession. I was told they were coordinating efforts for this almost 2 years ago, and again, have not followed through. When I call Salmon City Police Department, rarely is someone there to answer the phone. I have never once in 4 years had a message even go to voicemail, and their phone automatically disconnects me after about 5 rings. I feel silenced and ignored by the lack of response, as if the system has failed me. Next. Although I am still healing, I am reclaiming my life. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. I am reclaiming my life and thriving in many ways. Today, I fight back. Okay, back one. Today, I fight back with my words, advocacy work, and by my own healing work. I decided to step into my power, and I know any other survivor can too. Healing does not have to wait, and it isn't linear. It is hard work that can be discouraging, but when we tether ourselves to God, He can multiply our 5 loaves and 2 fish to feed thousands and still have leftovers to spare. I've been determined to become a child advocate and to change legislation to protect our children because it is my duty to stand up for our children. Professionally, I'm an educator, so policy work is not my skill set, and I feel completely inept in this arena. However, I jump in, I show up, and I believe in leaning into uncomfortable things. I have learned that I don't need to hold shame for speaking of abuse that was not my fault, and reclaiming my stolen voice has brought me so much joy. Little Kara is a survivor in every sense. My hell didn't win, and I am creating a better world for the next generation. I have vetted child sexual abuse prevention education curriculum for Utah and have volunteered with different organizations advocating for changes to child sexual abuse legislation. November of 2023, I felt specifically called to initiate and help pass Utah's Ritual Abuse House Bill 66 with Representative Ivory, and this was signed into law March of 2025. I have never been political, and I've needed a lot of help learning what to do. This is a pioneering bill because it is the first of its kind in Utah, and few states or countries have such a bill. I testified 5 times for this bill and for several others that I care about, and speaking about my abuse has been very empowering. Part of our law is an education component where we have phenomenal support training police officers and prosecutors on ritual abuse. Policy work and education are essential to this cause to have justice systems function, and it is our duty to jump in and create changes. With the help of a state board member, I initiated other legislation in Utah this year helping missing children. But unfortunately, this bill never moved forward, and there have been people opposing the protection of missing children. Next slide. There are many solutions to prevent and stop ritual abuse. We need you. We need people, number one, to believe the survivors. Encourage survivors to share their stories privately and publicly. Number two, we need ritual abuse experts in all areas to gather resources and then train others. 3, pass legislation to criminalize ritual abuse with stiff penalties. Number 4, we need good policies requiring accountability for police, prosecutors, and the entire justice system to follow through with reports, investigations, and prosecutions. Number 5, education is prevention. Educate law enforcement, child advocates, the general public, prosecution, families, educators. Prevention education, it would have changed my life. Number 6, share information and resources with those around you. Be a voice. Silence protects the abusers. Speaking up protects children. Number 7, religious institutions must recognize this issue and be aware. Perpetrators strive to fit in and are masterful groomers. Next slide. Number 8, speak up when the media or individuals shame victims. This is an article from a magazine in Salt Lake last year. Notice the arrow of what the editor likened ritual abuse survivors looking like. Is that how I look? I highlighted some words used that mock the victims. Do you think survivors will speak up when we are painted in such a negative light? Please speak up to media coverage that shames victims. Next, my last slide, almost my last slide. My healing is proof my abuser didn't win. And although I am still on my healing journey and still have dark days, my voice is stronger than the silence that once trapped me. There is always hope, always. The number one reason for my healing has been Jesus Christ. He has become my dearest friend in this difficult journey. And I would encourage anyone to connect to their spiritual power and expect miracles in the journey. I know He loves me. Gratitude has been powerful as I am still learning to be grateful in any circumstance, even for the really hard stuff. I have learned that abuse rewires your brain, but so does gratitude. So it's important to have self-compassion and to pay attention to the thoughts that you allow to be in your head. Gratefully, I have good insurance to pay for my hundreds and hundreds of therapy visits with my phenomenal trauma therapist and other medical needs. I'm indebted to my good family and friends who have listened to me weep and retell hours and hours and hours of these horrific experiences. The love of my parents saved me. Part of my healing has been through forgiving my abuser, or at least trying to. And I practice giving Jesus the heavy things I cannot hold. He does the miracles, not me. I know Jesus is the master healer, and coming to know Jesus is the very best thing about my abuse. I credit that forgiveness as an act of God because miraculously, I have always had mostly feelings of empathy for this man. Last slide. Healing is possible. This is how I choose to look back and see myself as a little girl. She is my hero. And in a world where she'd never received justice, she is a fighter for other children. I believe it is our imperative duty to become aware and educated so that we can stop these parasitic monsters from hurting our children. We cannot remain comfortable and have a safe world. Join me as we get uncomfortable defending the innocence of children. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Okay, so um, these stories are really important to share. I think especially, sorry, let me back up. So I've been with Big Ocean for almost a decade, and every single year we present at CSW. Sorry. And each year we like to highlight, of course, in reference to the theme, we like to highlight the issues that our women are going through. This year and this spring, we've all watched the unraveling of a terribly dark sex trafficking ring come to light through the Epstein files. And I think all of us are feeling so outraged and like we don't know where to begin. I think we're all seeing a lack of justice. And it's so hard to conceptualize that. And so Big Ocean we have an influence in the grand scheme of things, we have a very small influence. We speak at this conference once a year, and we have an influence with our women, but we have, an hour and a half to speak about the most important things. And we felt that sharing these stories was the most valuable thing we could do with our time here, with our limited influence on with CSW. It is so important to share these stories, these firsthand accounts. And I was so nervous to work on this presentation because I thought that it could become maybe too heavy or too difficult for people. But of course, Kara has a very good point that we do not shy away from difficult things. And I want it to be known that in the light of this terrible thing that's happening on a global scale, it's something that Big Ocean women have known about for years that is happening on a local scale. And I want it to be known that in the wake of this, we said something. We shared our stories. That's what matters to our children, to our future generations, which is what Big Ocean Women is all about. And also, throughout this week, throughout CSW, I have heard so many presenters sharing their own personal stories as well. And this has given me strength. Kara's story gives me strength. And I just want to thank you. If you are somebody listening and you have presented and you shared your story, thank you, thank you, thank you. Your story matters. So now I have the opportunity to share mine as well. Okay, Nicole. Thank you, Nicole, by the way. Thank you, Anne, Nicole, all the Big Ocean women that are on the call today. So many hands have come together to help this presentation. Okay, so we know that everybody knows here that the priority theme this year is about justice. And as I was contemplating, I couldn't help but think about the time in my life that I felt the most unjust as well. Okay, trying to be as strong as Kara here. So, um, so when I was 11 years old, my father's colleague raped me. He recorded the violence and sold this footage along with images as child pornography. And my abuser is walking free today due to legal loopholes. His family claimed that when the police came to confiscate the material, they intimidated them, and so they were able to shorten his sentence, and he's walking free today. So, as I've contemplated how I wish he would see full justice, including a lifelong sentence, mostly to keep other children safe, I've come across many other stories of women who've also not seen justice for their abuse, like Kara. And this has helped me to realize that justice is brittle, justice is finicky, and that we live in a fundamentally unjust society. It's not guaranteed. And so I decided that it was important for me to share this story. Mostly, one, I want it to be clear that as we're talking about our outcome suggestions, there's credibility here. This is not hypothetical scenarios for us. This is real lived experience. I also know that there are people on this call, there are people that are going to be watching this um, on a YouTube video later who are survivors who have maybe never shared their experience with anybody. And I want you to know that your experience matters. I hope you hear my voice now. There are two things I want you to know. Can we move to the next slide? Thank you, Nicole. Number one, that through strong families, it is possible to create a world where sexual violence is not simply punished, but unthinkable. That is possible. And number two, when justice is not met, because the vast majority of the time it is not, healing is still possible and healing is worth it. That last part has been difficult for me to accept. Okay, so a few caveats here. So much of my experience is similar to Kara's experience. When I talk about healing, I don't want it to sound like it's easy, like it's just the easy option. It's definitely not. It's very difficult. I suffer from PTSD that affects every aspect of my life. Sleep is a huge one that Kara talked about. Chronic illness, autoimmune diseases. It's affected my employment, my higher education, my faith, my social life. I'm forever changed, but I've been able to find meaning despite the pain, and that's really important. I also want to do an additional caveat here that I think a lot of people who talk about their abuse will say that they're grateful that their abuse happened because it turned them into the person they are today. And I want to say that I'm not grateful that my abuse happened. And it didn't turn me into the person I am today. I did. It did not make me stronger. I did. And I want all of the listeners who have been through something like this to understand that you deserve the credit for that and that you deserve the credit for your healing. At Big Ocean Women, we fundamentally believe in good, strong, and healthy families. And our suggestion today is that families are central to the purging of sexual violence that we are witnessing on a global scale and on a local scale. It is down to strong families. And I also want to say that we understand that so much of the abuse that's happening is happening within families. And so we are advocating for healthy, connective, vulnerable families. We still believe that despite the abuse, families are the solution. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Wonderful. Okay, so I want to talk about what causes sexual violence. We need to define some terms here in order to move forward. So the media seems to be saturated with the question right now, how did Epstein and his fellow abusers get away with it? We can talk about the blackmail, the corruption, the lack of justice. However, my fear is that by focusing on the how, we skip over the deeper question of why. Why would somebody abuse somebody in the first place, right? As citizens and family members, not necessarily as lawmakers, there is some preventative work in focusing on the how, but there's a lot more that we can do with the why. So getting to the why helps us to avoid victim blaming, like Kara mentioned, or pushing the notion that abuse is an inherent aspect of human life. It is not. So myths include the idea that sexual abuse is simply human nature, human biology, excuse me, or that testosterone plays a part in abuse. So these ideas have been debunked many times. Men with higher levels of testosterone do not abuse women at higher rates. People who are taking testosterone as a transitionary medication do not begin to become abusive people. This is simply not true. Ruth Whitman, an author and journalist, writes, evidence suggests that it is not innate aggression that makes men violent, but the internalized belief that they fall short of society's perceived standards for masculinity. Psychologists call this phenomenon masculine discrepancy stress. And research shows that the more acutely a man suffers from this, the more likely he is to commit almost every type of violence, including sexual assault, intimate partner violence, and assault with a weapon. So abuse is motivated by a compulsion to assert power or control over others, paired with the justification that victims are less deserving. It is important to understand that abuse is not tied to sexual desires, inherent sexual desires, and it's almost comical to say, but it needs to be said, that abuse is not motivated by the victim's choices, by their clothing choices, by how drunk they are, right? By them changing their mind. These ideas are not only harmful, but they're simply ineffective in solving the issue. Okay, next slide. There should be a graph, like a pyramid. One more. Perfect. Okay, wonderful. So the first argument that I often hear about this is, of course, not all men, right? We've all heard this one. And I want to talk about this graph here. So since abuse is motivated by a desire to control others, no one is immune to being an abuser. The binary idea that there are good men and bad men removes the accountability that we all have, regardless of social class or gender, to do better and be better. Every person I know has contributed to rape culture in one way or another, myself included. I have not always stood up against the gossip of private events or rape jokes the way I could have. All men and all women are responsible to take accountability and call out damaging behavior when we see it. So this is a visual of rape culture that I actually made as a teenager because I was frustrated in trying to explain these concepts. I felt frustrated that my peers and the people that I was talking to, everybody seemed to know a victim, but nobody could understand how rapists are created. So I wanted to explain that rape does not spring from nowhere. It is normalized and justified in the minds of abusers over the course of their entire life, and it begins with dehumanization. Okay, so you can see on the right hand, that's kind of like the overarching theme. It begins with dehumanization, and it fosters into victimization, which is the top kind of foundation there. And this looks like rape jokes, victim blaming, authority abuse, and then this builds into degradation. This looks like catcalling, upskirt photos, manipulation. This can escalate to a removal of autonomy. You guys are following the chart here. This looks like sexual coercion or drugging, and this is how we get to explicit violence. So these are not isolated events. Okay, next slide. So yes, all men and all women have a responsibility to be better. So in contrast, I made this graph as well. This is with the help of my Big Ocean mentors, specifically Carolina, if you remember this. I was like 17 when I made this. So this is a visual of life culture. So life culture is the same effect in the opposite direction, and this is the solution, and it's just as easily fostered as rape culture. So this begins with empowerment. This looks like open conversations, validation, body positivity, and this builds into a sense of dignity. So dignity looks like respect, confidence, and freedom in the individual. And then individuals with strong dignity are able to build healthy connection. So, connection is the single predictor of a healthy, happy life. Over and over again. And I've cited my sources. I think they're at the end of this presentation here. So, this looks like trust, commitment, and even romance. I didn't point this out, but in the first slide, that kind of icon of healing, that was me and my husband. So romance is a huge proponent of life culture. And finally, we're able to build a physical and emotional bond that is safe, empowering, and beneficial for everybody. This is what safety looks like, not only in sexuality, but in human connection in general. This is important because, like Kara mentioned, it is easier to believe that there are monsters out there that abuse children and that we play no part in fostering abuse. It's easier to believe that all of the adults you know are simply good people and are completely sovereign from bad people. However, it's not that simple and it's not that easy. If we want to have a world that does not reward abuse like our world currently is, we must begin with where we stand. Okay, next slide. So this is a powerful quote. He's a feminist author, and he talks about abuse of women. Jonah Mix here, he says, "I'm not interested in a world where men want to abuse but resist because they've been shamed. I'm interested in a world where men are raised from birth with such an unshakable understanding of women as living human beings that they are incapable of being aroused by their exploitation." So the last line here, "I'm interested in a world where men are raised from birth with such an unshakable understanding of women." The first place that comes from is from powerful, healed, empowered mothers. Mothers have the single largest impact on their children to show what unshakable understanding of women as human beings looks like. That starts in the family. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is the second part of my message. When justice is not met, which it most of the time is not, healing is still possible and healing is worth it. Fatima talked about this, Kara talked about this. This is the main crux of our whole presentation. This is what I want everybody to take home. Okay, so to begin, let's talk about what trauma is. We need to better understand it. So when a traumatic event occurs, it physically alters our brains. So the prefrontal cortex physically shrinks, and this is our center for decision making and emotional regulation, and the hippocampus shrinks. This is where we store memory, so it's very common for memory blockages and dissociation for survivors. Kara talked about this. This has definitely been in my experience as well. And the amygdala becomes hyperactive. This is our fight or flight response. Luckily, through emotional and mental healing, your brain can physically heal as well. According to many studies, but specifically one done in 2018, connection via relationships is the most effective tool in healing the biomarkers of trauma. Okay, next. Okay, so what do abusers and victims have in common? Kara talked about shame, this shame that she feels. In all of the complex cases of abusers, victims, and everybody in between, shame damages us all. Shame is what keeps victims silent and stuck in trauma patterns, and shame is what perpetuates the culture that allows abuse to take place. So Brené Brown, most of you know her, she's a very popular shame researcher. She says, "I define shame as the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Something we've experienced, done, or failed to do makes us unworthy of connection. I don't believe shame is helpful or productive. In fact, I think shame is much more likely to be the source of destructive behavior than the solution or cure. I think the fear of disconnection can make us dangerous. She goes on to talk about how shame and guilt are two different things. There's a healthy amount of guilt, right, to reflect on bad actions. But shame is this belief that we are flawed, and it spirals into avoidance and isolation, a lack of connection. This is where it is very common to lash out to gain control, and this perpetuates the disconnection. So shame is a spiral that's dangerous. And the opposite of shame is vulnerability, as Dr. Brown explains. Connection and vulnerability is the best action we can take to simultaneously heal victims and prevent abusers. At the same time, it's one solution: vulnerability and connection. This is why policy support for the family unit is the best action forward to actually create justice. Okay, next. Okay, so these are some pictures of some of my favorite women in the whole world. These are some of our Big Ocean Waves. So Big Ocean Women facilitates healing through organization in our local chapters or waves, as I've explained earlier. The women in our organization are not helpless, even when the state justice systems do not hear them. They take healing into their own hands. Our women are vulnerable and strong. Our global sisterhood is the epitome of growth, empowerment, and safety. Next. Okay, so this is the key. With or without policy reform, healing is possible. And there is no force more powerful to reform an abusive system than healed women, healed mothers, and I would add healed people as well. Next. So these are our policy recommendations that we have, an oral and written statement that we have added for the outcome document for CSW. The first is strengthening AI regulation by implementing accountability on a national level for the generation, distribution, or normalization of sexually explicit content, including synthetic or AI-generated exploitation. These crimes are not victimless. I could go on a whole nother presentation about this, about the content that was sold from me and my little 11-year-old body are currently informing the LLMs that are creating child porn that's AI generated today, right? These are not victimless crimes. We need better regulation on this. Number two is the support for policies and UN language that supports and preserves the role of the family unit as the foundation of society. Recognizing healthy and good parents, keywords there, and caregivers as the moral guards in their well-being, protection, and development of children. And number three is we want to encourage accountability for all sexual abuse perpetrators, regardless of authority or wealth, including child exploitation and trafficking done across borders. Those are our asks. Okay, Carol, we're going to turn the time over to you, and then we'll have a quick Q&A.
Thank you so much. I hope you guys can hear me. It's such a pleasure to be with you. And I have to say, I was just holding back so many tears. Grace, I've known Grace since she was a little girl. And I know that today was really hard for you, and you did it. Just proud of Kara and proud of everybody. These are really hard topics, and I am very grateful for the fact that all of you are attending this with us and setting apart a bit of your day to learn more about these difficult issues. It speaks volumes to the people that you are and the work that you, I hope, will be called to engage in. We've heard some extremely challenging things during this presentation. We've heard stories of systems that overlook and, they overlook at best, and in many ways they're complicit to the harm. We've heard of legal gaps and jurisdictional barriers. We've heard of trauma that impacts not just individuals, but generations. Next slide, please. So for example, we've talked about, we are Big Ocean Women for faith, family, and motherhood, but we also don't close our eyes to the reality that in homes, 1 in 7 children experience abuse or neglect each year. We know that most abuse is committed by someone that the child knows or trusts, often within family or close relationships. This is the reality of it, and we don't shield our eyes to this. We also know, as Kara explained, that schools aren't necessarily, institutions or places where children are completely safe. Up to 17% of students actually report being targets of sexual misconduct by a school employee. This was a research discussed by Harvard Graduate School of Education based on their educator misconduct studies. And the author of the study is Shake Shaft, who is bringing this to light. We also know that in religious institutions, so we are Big Ocean Women for Faith. We advocate for faith. We know that 83% of the women of the world are women who identify with the faith tradition. While this is true, our own, religious institutions aren't free of this corruption. Thousands of investigations, tens of thousands of victims are identified just in the United States alone, with being victims of abuse within their houses of worship and by clergy. And then we even gathered here together at this international forum, the United Nations. And even in this international forum, we have, 2,000 allegations of sexual exploitation from UN peacekeepers, including 300 cases of children that was under investigation. And, we understand, we have to be real here, that these systems will fail to protect the most vulnerable. They just do. Okay, the numbers don't tell us, however, that families, schools, churches, or international institutions are inherently unsafe. What they do is tell us that every system created to protect children requires vigilance. It requires moral integrity by the people that inhabit them. So it requires good men and good women, fathers and mothers, to step into their true leadership and expand their influence. That is what the call is for you to do today, that you have a direct role in every area of your life, in your home, in your schools, in your churches, in the international arena, and everywhere in between, to be vigilant and to make people accountable, even by calling things out when you, just like Grace shared about her diagram, to not be complicit in the culture that we are creating. This is what it means to be a true leader. Okay, next slide. So amidst all of these systemic failures, so many ways that fail to protect the most vulnerable, there's a common theme, and I hope that you've seen it today, a thread of tremendous hope that weaves between so many stories of survival. So even though systems have failed to protect, there's this incredible phenomenon that happens. It's this ripple effect of women's true leadership. When women heal and rise, the outcome is magnificent. Children gain safety, families regain stability, communities rebuild trust, and society becomes stronger. This is the essence of Big Ocean Women model of powerful impact. We talk about it all the time. We can't deny the fact that when one woman speaks out, her courage in the face of violence creates a ripple effect. Communities begin to listen and to take note and open their eyes. That's the first ripple outward. And then one woman refusing to give up impacts other women, mothers, sisters, friends, to see and to listen and to advocate along with her. And we counsel together in these groups, which we call waves. And then we discuss ideas for action. So in essence, a mother rising can impact in her home, can impact in her school, in her church, in her community, and even in international systems. Next slide. The truth is, we don't just fill in the gaps. We are actually the cement mortar between the gaps that keeps society standing in the face of collapse. Throughout history, this has been the only system robust enough to withstand system collapse. And it's about time we start expanding our understanding of justice, because justice doesn't just work within these structured systems within society. Justice actually begins in healing from the inside out and healing trauma deep within us. This is the work that we have to do. This is the work that we have to engage in. And everyone has experienced some form of trauma in their life. And so when we begin this healing journey, legal accountability and restoration begin working together. It gives us this unquenching drive to continue to protect the next generation. And that intensity, it just builds and builds and builds. And so it begins when good adults expand their moral authority in the protection of children. Community restoration can happen as we advocate for truth and use our faith that provides us the internal resilience and drive to overcome these crimes in the first place. This is what true advocacy looks like. It is rooted deep inside, and it has to come from a place of healing. If it doesn't come from a place of healing, what I've seen with my own eyes, what happens is there's this big light, this big fire that's lit, and it's an insatiable fire, and it can consume even the victim, which we don't want to happen. What we need is just an ember that just burns strong through the years and that can improve with each generation. And this is what we call maternal authority in action. And this is what Big Ocean Women train others, other women throughout the world in this true leadership model. Next slide. Throughout these discussions, we can see something powerful emerge. We can see that women are not waiting for systems to be repaired before healing begins. Across the world, mothers and women are already doing the quiet work of justice every day. They're protecting children. They're sheltering the vulnerable. They're preserving faith, dignity, and culture in places where law and policy have turned a blind eye. These women are living witnesses that healing does not only come through institutions, it rises through human relationships, through faith, courage, compassion, and the instinct to protect life. One of the most powerful forces we see across every culture represented here is a maternal drive to safeguard the rising generation. When a mother stops the cycle of abuse for even one child, something profound happens. She not only protects that child's future, she also heals something within herself, just like Kara talked about little Kara. It's almost like you can travel back in time and actually rescue that younger version of yourself. And deep healing happens when we can provide it for other people. When women stand together, believing in one another, protecting one another, refusing to let harm define that next generation, they become architects of stability in their families and communities, which is the foundation of justice to begin with. In light of the massacre happening to Christians in Nigeria and throughout the world, I wish to exercise my free will in showing my source of healing and strength, what has always been and will always be Jesus Christ. I am happy and grateful for Jesus Christ of Nazareth, my personal anchor, my Savior and friend, that he has never left me comfortless. And that strength has enabled me to carry on in my darkest days. I couldn't end my presentation today without expressing where exactly my hope and my strength resides. Next slide. And now at Big Ocean Women, we are big believers in action. We believe that awareness has to lead to action. So we invite, as women of faith, we know that powerful action begins with prayer. Prayer is where courage is born, and it's where clarity comes, and it's where quiet promptings of action really begins. We invite you to pray for wisdom, for courage, and for insight into what each of us can personally do to better protect the women and children in our families and communities. Pray individually, pray as families, pray with others, pray with solidarity, but don't stop there. Prayer only prepares the heart, but it also calls us to move. We have prepared a mother's advocacy toolkit that we can share with you if you send us your email here in the chat. We will send you these educational resources and opportunities for action. We don't want you just to walk away from this presentation and say, well, that was great. This is just the beginning. We have a lot of work to do together. You have already taken the first step simply by being here today. The next steps are within our reach too. which is it could be sharing verified research, discussing these issues with your communities, with your families, supporting survivor-led organizations, to engage in elected leaders, in participating in advocacy efforts, and in teaching children, okay, in age-appropriate ways, all about dignity, safety, and the sacred worth of every human life. Because when women pray and then when women act, something truly remarkable happens. That's when justice systems fail, we see mothers rise. Thank you so much for coming today. We also want to share the next slide, which is our tenant calendar. And we are happy to share this tenant calendar with you as well, if there is interest, and you can follow along in our 12 tenets. Every month we discuss one of these principles, one of these truths that anchor us together. We encourage you to use the language maternal feminism, and in these tenets, this is where our true power lies. So we always invite everyone to join us in speaking these truths in connection with one another as a global sisterhood. We thank you so much for spending time with us, and now we can open it up to a little bit of, I don't know if we have time for Q&A.